Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Unfiltered HR. And today I have Mr. Erik Eustice with me. We're not doing the small business employer spotlight series anymore. Sorry. So you're not in the spotlight right now?
Okay, that's
So you're in the
fair.
sunlight?
Naturally diffused
Skylight sunlight?
light.
So we're not here to celebrate you as a small business employer. So don't get any.
All right,
about
perfect.
But you are a perfect expert host to have for this episode, which is about the power of story. And I consider you to be maybe Buffalo's resident expert on storytelling and the power of story.
Oh, I know a few people that are pretty excellent at it in Buffalo, and I bet they would not love to hear you say that.
Well, I hope they're listening. So yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today.
Excellent.
And it doesn't seem like an HR topic, but it is. And
Yes.
people are going to find out how it relates to HR and people operations in the episode.
Awesome.
But I think maybe where we can start is having you tell us your story.
You don't think we should start with the Canadian national anthem?
That might be helpful right now in our international relations with Canada.
Yeah.
Well, no.
Peace offering.
Yeah, we'll just stay on topic, unfortunately.
Okay.
This is a not fun podcast. I know yours is fun.
I'm
I
already
was
on.
on Eric's recently, by the way, so if you want to look that up, it's called Here, Hold This, where you hold something and talk about things under duress.
I think your ass. And doesn't that sound like fun?
It is fun in a weird, strange way that only someone like me would describe as fun.
You were great, by the way.
Weird.
You were great. Unsurprisingly, you were great.
Yeah.
And I'm having fun right now, just so we're clear.
Okay.
This is fun. I think this is fun.
So tell us your story.
My story.
Your story related to story, I guess, if that makes sense.
Best storyteller I have ever known would be my grandfather, my mom's dad, Norman Charles Dumais. So I grew up listening to him tell stories. I think my mom picked it up, and so somehow it trickled down to me. But I didn't realize it when I was young. It wasn't until I got into art and music, photography is what I graduated. It's visual storytelling. And then, of course, you go and you sell cell phones.
Oh.
As one does, because you can't make a living doing art. Well, I couldn't make a living doing art.
Well, not then, but you kind of are now.
Right, there you go. And so, so it took me a bit to figure that out. It's just about how you deploy it, right? So I found my way into marketing and advertising, and that's a lot about storytelling, or the best ads are stories. And so I studied story. And I traveled to a place called Wizard Academy in Austin, Texas. A guy named Roy H. Williams.
That's real.
And shout out to Roy, brilliant storyteller, advertising genius, and I learned a ton about story and persuasion and communication from Roy and through his school there. And primarily work with owner-operated businesses. And being an owner-operator, I know the spotlight is not on me, but being an owner-operator of a small business, there's the journey you go through of being that and then working with people that are similar. And I realized that the story that I was telling myself as a leader, what it means to lead, who my team is, all that sort of stuff, I realized, well, those are all stories. I realized your culture is a story, your values, your personality. I mean, all these things, these are all stories, and it's really the quality of your stories, I think, that determine the quality of your reality. So I've just really leaned into that whole idea of leveraging story to impact reality. So we do that through the advertising stuff still, but also through leadership and culture kind of coaching and consulting. So that's where we're at right now at Of the Sea.
So you help your clients align their story with both their internal and external kind of facing brands. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole idea. That was kind of the epiphany, was everyone's doing it externally.
Yes.
Very few are doing it internally. No one really seemed to be integrating those things. And it's not like no one anywhere is doing it. It's just, it was not the common thing. So I said, like, that just makes sense.
Yeah.
That be better that way.
So you started only like the business originally was just focused on the external like brand marketing.
Yep.
Very more typical. That's like what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably very accurate, and I find that to be the case too, where no one is kind of concerned about internal branding, and also if they think about it, there's really not a lot of purpose put into it whatsoever. Like I think there's a lot of purposeful, thoughtful effort put into what you want your brand to be, from the outside world, your product or service, what you want to be known for. And, from an HR standpoint, when you're hiring or creating a culture, it just happens by accident or just kind of like whatever occurs.
Which is kind of amazing, actually. Like, it's like we say it's incidental, which can be amazing. Because usually you're dealing with people that are good people that have a great heart and vision for what they believe is possible. And the reality of their business in a lot of ways does live up to it. But it lives up to it only to the degree that it kind of just naturally, instinctively flows out of usually the leader, right? And so the thinking is that like, well, what if you could do it not incidentally, but do it intentionally? Do it almost all the time, because you're never going to be perfect. But if you do it almost all the time, well, what could you accomplish if you're already doing okay? Just kind of doing it by gut, right? And then you don't want to underestimate how powerful, because like sometimes you can overthink these things. Yeah. But like a little bit of thought plus your gut, I think is a better combination.
Yeah. Yeah. Just something purposeful, thoughtful, I think.
Yeah.
So the title of this episode is The Power of Story, and the value of story. I think we have to bring it back to value. It's a business related.
Absolutely, ROI.
Podcast.
Let's go.
Yeah. Why do you think it is valuable? I mean, obviously people are paying you to help them do this from an external facing standpoint, but also internal. Why was that something that like eventually resonated with clients and that you were able to build a reputation for doing and get more people to pay you money to do? Like, why do you think it's valuable?
Adam, you assume that we get paid to do this. That's very kind of you.
I do, yeah. I see this next, so I must.
We play for the love of the game.
Okay.
It's valuable because it works.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. Someone who is leading a multi-generational business, who was leading it very successfully for many years, but found themselves a little disconnected from their work. Didn't have the same level of enthusiasm, energy, passion for what they were doing, but you're on the track, right? So you just keep going forward. From the outside, everything looks great. But on the inside, day by day, it's kind of draining your soul, right?
But what impacts is that having on business?
So, well, one, it's limiting potential. We're all about potential and expanding potential. So it's limiting the potential. So, and this is the thing, sometimes it's like, well, they're not bad. Like, we're profitable, customers are generally happy, team seems happy, right? But you're limiting potential. So it's not just about being bigger to be bigger, but if you're good at what you do and you do create value and impact, why not try to create more of that value, that impact, right? So it limits the potential of the organization. You're limiting the potential of your team, right? Because you do not make the investment to explore what their potential is and create a broader and grander path for them, whether that's with you or eventually somewhere else, right? But the point is you're playing small, and when you're playing small, everyone who's playing with you, if they're playing by your rules,
right,
also playing small, right? So to me, it's a lot about potential. And so if you take a step back and you start to ask yourself, okay, who am I? Why am I doing it this way? Why did I start this thing? Am I doing it for the same reasons? Do I keep it going for the same reasons that I got into it? what do I really want to accomplish? This is probably my life's work. I spend most of my waking hours doing this thing, right? So you're evaluating the story, your story, basically. And you can take a story that is probably not, it's sufficient to a point, but it's lacking. And you can replace it with a more powerful story, a more useful story that opens you up to greater potential. And when you do that, you start to see things differently. You see your role differently. You see your people differently. You see your business differently. You become curious. You get excited. The ideas start flowing, and all of a sudden, things are happening. Things that were not happening before. And in the instance of the story that I'm telling, a new perspective led to a bigger vision, which led to a deeper level of commitment in the role, which led to creating opportunity in the marketplace that was 25 to 30 times
Wow.
the size of the opportunity that they had previously been experiencing. And that is like, it's a little absurd to say, but it is 100% true. Does that happen every day?
Yeah.
I wish I had a lever to make that happen every day, but when you are someone who embraces it and takes it seriously and does the work, that's the sort of stuff that can happen. And when you hear of organizations that they make these big leaps and they do these incredible things, on some level, the core people in that organization, this is the way that they're thinking.
So what about it? Like, what about that honing in on or further expanding that story or getting more in touch with that story allows that value to be created? Is it about creating a more authentic brand that resonates to people? Like, I think people respond to authenticity pretty universally well.
Yeah. I think that's a downstream effect.
Okay.
Yes. I do think that it creates something that people can enroll themselves into and say, oh, this is cool. I want to be a part of this. I think vision's a big piece of it, right? So people want to be involved in something where there's a compelling vision, and they also want to see and believe that they play a vital role in the fulfilling of that vision. So part of what comes out of this is creating vision and connecting people to that vision and creating personal vision. Another piece is purpose. You create an actual sense of purpose for yourself in your leadership, for your organization that goes beyond the thing that you technically do. And then you can help your team individually come to understand what their individual purpose is and how that again rolls up to the grander purpose of this organization. So I'd say so really what it comes down to though, I think is awareness. Okay, these are all different levels of awareness. And when you gain new perspective, right, you shift your paradigm, that's when new things can happen. So it's mostly finding new levels of awareness, but not like brand awareness externally. That's not what we're talking about, because that is a thing. We're talking about more of a internal self-awareness.
Like being in touch with.
Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a huge, and I know you do internal organizational work, and I'll try to be nice to you, even though we're kind of competitors in that space. No, not totally similar, but it is similar. Because,
Complementary, I would say.
yeah,
Complementary.
I would agree. A lot of work I do, and we're at ODL right now, which is a mutual friend of ours, my great client of mine.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for letting us use your space.
Yeah, Eric was stealing trade secrets earlier.
Oh, yeah.
The walls. But
Absolutely.
Anyway. But no, you were taking a picture on the way in of, here at ODL, they've done a really great job of, I think, they're a second generation business, family-run business, and they've done a great job from the beginning of really defining their vision. They manufacture orthodontic, retainers and that kind of thing for the market. And of course, that's what they do. But the vision part of it is creating smiles for people, right? And so they've done a great job of taking that vision, like that's kind of their story and, their family story, and integrating it really down into everything else they do, whether it's their external marketing or their internal brand with their staff. And we've spent a lot of time kind of reworking and realigning that stuff in the last year. But it's posted on the walls. It's prevalent in our hiring processes now, like the values that like feed up into that vision. We literally review staff based on those core values, against those core values every quarter. And so we're constantly creating reminders of awareness of this is the purpose of why we all come here every day to do this, and making sure like we build in actual infrastructure to constantly realign behavior to that and make sure that we have the right people here that resonates with, and that really results in the business running quite a bit more smoothly than it otherwise could or would if you were trying to kind of force people into believing something or knowing something that they just really weren't on board with.
You're right. Yeah. There's a lot in that.
Yeah. Well, then in what I would just said, or
Yes.
yeah,
And what you just said. Yeah. Yeah.
I blacked out. So
No, that was great. Did you take a breath there? Yeah. No, that was great. Very well said. Yeah, I'm super impressed. I took the picture because I love that stuff. I love seeing organizations that get it, and Mike and his partners, and you obviously get it, right? And I have not quite seen it, because mostly we get brought into situations like where it's absent, you know. And so like to see, because Mike was the guest on Here Hold This a couple episodes ago, and just to hear him talk about it, it's like, man, this guy gets it, you know. But it's like not lip service, right? Like, you know, like what you're describing, it's the reality of the business, right? It's the reality of their leadership, and that's the big difference when it works and when it doesn't work.
So when clients come to you, like, you know, I think, and if people are listening to this and they're thinking, like, a lot of this stuff, especially in the HR space, of course, people know they have to be compliant, you know, they have to like.
Do you know that actually?
Well, you do, in case you didn't know.
Yeah.
So
I'm
like,
not sure everyone knows that.
and probably for you in the marketing realm too, it's like there's this very like, I think it's like left brain mentality of like, we just gotta, you know, hit a number or do this thing. It's a deliverable to check the box, right? You have to be compliant, and we have to like hire people, or for you, you know, like we have to like get in front of, you know, customers, sell things.
So yeah.
So, you know, a lot of my clients come to me, and that's really all they're looking to do initially is just kind of solve problems they have right now with people, and then like prevent and mitigate future problems and risk. And then over time, in the relationship and the engagement, we ultimately, eventually, and this is for me, like the rewarding work, we end up getting into this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, okay, like we've solved the problems. You're not operating from a deficit anymore. Your people are like a liability and like, you know, not adding value. And we start doing this really value add work where, you know, if your people, you're here and this is where you think you can end up. But if you get your people to be even more engaged and perform at a higher level, like they can really provide actually more value, and you can hit numbers you didn't believe that you could hit before.
Yeah.
Do you find that to be the case where people when you initially engage, you know, they're not really convinced of it. They think this kind of stuff is fluff, story, culture, engagement.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds. I think that we're fortunate to have clients that trust us. They believe in me and the team. I've gotten feedback from clients that they went along with it because they trusted me, but did not fully understand what we were doing. And then once they got into it, they realized gradually, right? Because it really is, it's a mindset shift.
Yeah.
This is stuff that like story and I mean, story is the medium, I would say, right? But we're dealing with all these like fundamental human principles, right? And this is like water to a fish. It's all around us, but we don't understand it. It's operating at as I say subconscious is maybe too deep of a level, but it's like people are not thinking really like about this stuff. So it is very foreign. The thing is though, if it is actually how we work, if these fundamental human principles that people have been talking about and affirming for thousands of years in every culture, you know, like if they are actually like a thing, then we got to deal with them, right? But they're difficult to deal with, and we don't know how to deal with them on our own. And because we're inside the bottle, it's hard to read the label. So if you don't have someone on the outside who's objective enough, but also cares enough,
Patience. And
yeah, how are you going to even, it's tough. It's tough to do that work. But it is some of the most important work that you can do because it's the stuff, like they say facts tell, stories sell.
God.
I hear that. Like the idea is like you really, if you want people to really give remarkably of themselves, they have to have their heart in it. How do you get into someone's heart, right? That's
Chocolates.
yeah, chocolates, yeah, jewelry. Okay, I feel like that is yeah, maybe for some. I know you just, but like how like that's one thing about story, right? Story is a powerful way to get into people's hearts and to shape. Stories express beliefs, but they also shape beliefs. And at the root of everything is a belief, right? And your core values are probably the deepest building blocks of your belief system. And so like nobody wants to like take the time to deal with all that stuff, but if you do not, what are you building on top of?
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think you can run a business and, do and make money without that, I think. But it's going to be, I think it's almost like running I don't know. Now I'm going to get into analogies. Like maybe like running an engine without oil. Like maybe it can run for a little while and eventually it's probably going to seize up or it's going to certainly be more taxing to that system than it needs to be. Things aren't going to naturally occur because people they're not resonating with the story. They're not aligned. They're not engaged,
Yeah.
So
There's a great book by David York. It's called The Gift of Lift. And it's a treatise for a stewardship mindset to leadership, an others-oriented approach. And he basically defines stewardship as transcendence plus investment. So transcendence, something bigger than you, right? Investment, your willingness to sacrifice and commit yourself to the thing. And when you put those two things together, that you're probably showing up as a steward versus an owner mindset, which doesn't necessarily have to be a negative thing, right? But ownership is more about this is my thing and what do I get out of it? You can run your business or lead a team through an owner mindset and actually get pretty remarkable results. And people aren't necessarily like miserable in that environment. But it's like, what are you creating? What is the durability of that thing? And what is the true impact of that thing? Is it merely economic? Is it merely transactional? Because like stewardship is about relationship, right? Not just transaction. Transactions occur. So what it comes down to, I think, is just like, well, what do you believe? Some people believe in the stewardship approach. And some people believe in the ownership approach. Okay, but so like if you believe in the ownership approach and that's working for you, like good luck. Like you're not gonna convince that person, right? Something has to not be working. Something has to be running afoul in them.
yeah.
For them to go, maybe this is not like the best way to do this, right? So no judgment there, but I think it's a little foolish
But the truth,
to try like,
I always say the truth's unavoidable. It reveals itself. So I think, yeah, you can run that way for a while, like we were saying, with like an engine, but it's gonna, at some point, little things are gonna get out of alignment and tweaks and the whole thing, like, yeah, slowly will start being more difficult than it needs to be or whatever. Quality issues, you're not making money anymore like you were. And I think and then I think it dies or they convert.
sure.
I think that's true.
Yeah, probably. I'm thinking through you're just like, to say some, and there are some things that are like always wrong, I think, but there are a few, there's not a lot of stuff that's like always right or always wrong. So I feel like there are probably some environments in which that's the contract
Yeah.
and everyone's actually okay with that.
Yeah.
But if someone's in that environment but doesn't understand that that's the contract,
Yeah.
that's a problem for that person, right? And if part of the contract is, well, as long as something's coming in, we'll send something out, but then there's any hiccup or snag,
and joins that.
well, yeah, like, well, that the machine starts to break down, right? So I suppose that you're correct. But if everyone because there's integrity in that. If everyone is like, this is how we're doing it, and everyone's like, sign me up, there isn't actually a problem there.
There's
right?
no soul, but they all agree to operate.
If they're like,
It's
yeah, and maybe that's like, maybe that's what you might say not right for you. That doesn't sound like something I want to be a part of. Like, just because we can make money doing it doesn't mean that we personally should be the people to do that thing, right? For me, there has to be some sort of like personal connection. I have to believe that this thing is for me to be a part of or for me to do, right? Like there's a spiritual element.
I think there is for most humans pretty universally. Have you read The Truth About Employee Engagement?
No, is that a book you wrote?
Yeah. It's I know you're a fan of Patrick Lencioni. I'm pretty sure.
That's a Patrick Lencioni.
I think it is.
Because I feel like that's probably the only one of his books I have not read.
I think it is but it's written more like a fable, where it's a story of this executive who worked for a business that made, I think, like exercising equipment, and then he retires and he's bored and he starts thinking about all of these principles that he at least really he comes down to three main principles that he deployed at this organization that he actually like turned it around. It became, wildly successful. And then it was kind of time to set it off in its sunset, and gets bored in this pyramid town. He wants to really like fine tune and understand what was it about what he did and implemented as a leader that was super effective. So he just experiments by starting to work at this pizzeria in this retirement town, and he can a very small staff, right? That's not like a corporate business like you would think. A manufacturing facility that's million or $1 billion. It's a totally different animal, right? Like how possibly could the same concepts apply and work in a pizzeria? But they do. And it's really a lot about what you said, because one of the three core pillars of engagement, according to the story, is having measurable results that you communicate to people that they know to work towards. That one is pretty easy. But the other two have to do with creating a sense of purpose. Like they need to understand how their role, right, even the janitor or whomever that works for you, impacts the greater vision and mission that you're serving as a business. Because even here, if we have cleaners and they're not making the retainers or selling the product or marketing it, they still are a part of the whole system that allows that to be possible and deliver smiles to people that wear the retainers. And then the other concept is about anonymity and reducing that, and that is about really the relationship that leadership and direct leadership has with employees. They feel cared about, they feel like what they're doing makes a difference every day, and all of that is communicated and shared through the relationships with the leadership and the management. So yeah, to me that all ties back to story though, in a way. Like we all are here collectively in this thing, we all have purpose in it, and we all have value in it. And if everybody believes that, then everyone is, without a lot of need for intervention, working toward that mission.
100%, and that's the goal. And I would say that you're right. So that's the first story that you have to kind of get straight. Why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier, that like, I think there's a couple ways you can go with that story. And I agree. I think we are spiritual beings. I think we need to have a sense of truth and purpose and connection to something bigger than ourselves. But while we get that through our work, and I love helping others find that through their work, because that's part of my goals. Like, I'm going to integrate your life. You're not hiring me to do that, but I'm going to do it. And it's just, that's a bonus. But not everyone necessarily needs to get that through their work, and they can find that elsewhere. And that's where I think there are some instances where they can actually separate those things. I'm not saying that there's a lot of people that are successfully doing that, but I could see a world in which that could be accomplished. I don't want to live that story. I want to live the story that you're talking about, and we end up working with people that want to live the story that you and I are talking about.
Yeah, I think that's maybe an older school mentality too, working too, because I think that probably used to be more traditional, like, the factory jobs and you go home and you like, right, you're not like you're on an assembly line. So what, it's a little bit harder to like have to feel maybe like, I mean, I'm sure some people feel passionately about that enthusiastic, but it's a bit different now, especially, and I'm sure any employers listening to this, the younger generation employee and person w- wants to have meaning and find meaning in everything they do. And if they don't, they're really, I don't know if that's like the social media effect or whatever it is where people are skiing mountains, but um,
I feel like I've heard maybe that, and this is what you hear because like everything's a headline, and I don't really like try to stay in the news cycle and stuff. And I feel like that's how people talked about millennials was meaning in everything. But I feel like that's not how I've heard people talking about Gen Y and Gen Z as it relates to work, and that the criticism sometimes is not realize these are generations and there's lots of different people with different backgrounds and circumstances.
Very
Generations. So it's like you gotta be careful, right? That there's that, that separation actually from work and life, right? And there's more maybe a tendency to go back towards because there was a swing. You're right. I think like the greatest generation, so the parents of the boomers, were very much about separating the things. Like I don't need purpose in my work because my purpose is my family, and the work just allows me to do that. And boomers were like, no, man, like it matters. And then like Gen X maybe comes in along with that. Maybe millennials kind of fit in there. But I feel like I sense that maybe it was swinging more to a compartmentalization. And so I wonder though, so these things are cyclical, I think. They like a pendulum swing. But I wonder how true is what I just said there, or if you flip it and say, well, is that because you can't find purpose in work because there's no one in your work environment that's saying you should, that this is possible, exactly, and that this is who we are here, and this is what we do, is we work and live with purpose, and to us, these are integrated concepts. If that was the case, would there be less compartmentalization? Because people are, to your point, people are people. We all have the same needs, and they don't seem to be really changing fundamentally.
Yeah, I find it to be pretty universal that once you start implementing these kinds of, changes or with the stories and just kind of this movement inside an organization, it does a lot of the lingering and trying to make this like, sorry, I'm going to try to make this very tangible back to HR topics for the listeners, which the whole point of this episode is to try to inspire other employers and small business owners to move in this direction and understand that there is a lot of power to knowing what their story is and their specific story. We're not implying certainly that you should make one up that's like inauthentic, because that's not going to work either. And try to force it on yourself and other.
And actually, we've seen we know that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that has been a method that's been tried before. You can try and kind of concoct this thing in a bit of a lab. And then you try to like just wrap it on to a business, and it doesn't work.
No. It will be revealed to not see authentic.
Yeah, you can sniff that out very easily.
But there is so much value to be gained from it. And this is just, again, a side of like, HR and people operations as it relates to engagement and things like that. But just this idea of culture building, whether it's from an HR perspective or some other perspective, it doesn't always have to come through that channel. Where it gets the eye roll every time, and it's just considered to be fluff and not of significance, and certainly a lot of the time not of value to like the hardcore, black and white business people. But there is so much value to it. And like I said, I see it with all my clients eventually over time, whether they kind of even understand that is what we're doing or not, with just simple things like, an employee handbook is full of policies, right? Like you have to have like 50 pages of government required policies in it. Well, that's just the required part. And then hopefully we get like 20 to 30 pages is like which it should be like your custom built manual and Bible for your business. Like, this is how we behave. This is what we do. And one of the policies, this I bring this up as an example a lot, is attendance, because that's something that's so universal to every business, right? Like people just need to show up to work on time, be reliable. And it's probably the most ubiquitously disruptive part of any workplace, it's just getting people to do that. But I think story and aligning that and the sense of purpose and responsibility that goes along with that to the vision, but also the people that you work with and the customers you serve, to people's lived and play experience, helps remedy that problem to a large degree, because then they feel accountable to something other than just this stupid policy. So it starts with maybe policy and, a stick approach of like there will be penalties, but then people, I think over time, people who do a good job with this are inspired to perform and behave better, including for something as stupid as attendance.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I agree.
Nothing to add to that.
I actually have an idea,
Okay.
but I am not going to share it right now.
On air?
I'm not sure on there. Because to me, it's actually a pretty freaking good idea. That, based on what you just said.
Very well.
So mine is
Yeah.
because I think it's something you might end up wanting to do,
Okay. Great.
and I think it's So let's just
We'll do it.
table that. Let's table that.
So yeah, how have you done your own business? How to apply these principles?
Well, we eat our own cooking, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we know what our purpose is. It's to inspire owner-operators to expand their brand and their leadership to its full potential. We know what our unique ability is, and that's helping them to see, believe in, and pursue what's possible. They have our core values. We have a vision that's a narrative style vision that operates like basically it's the story of your future. And of course, I keep those locked in a little box in my office, and I don't share them with my team.
Okay.
No, but our team knows what these things are because we talk about them. We have a set of core beliefs that we review. We made a game out of it, and every Monday in our team meeting, we play the game, and it involves our core beliefs.
Okay.
And we have a standard of performance that is kind of like the way we think about playing the game that we play. And when we do team lunches on a monthly basis, we take one of those standards of performance and we talk about it. And every single team member has what I call an enlightened job description, trademark pending. And that's a job description as you would know it, but it also has a purpose, a promise, and a place for that role, and a definition of what top performance looks like in that role, which is a story. These are all stories. Everything I said, those are all stories. And so every team member knows what the purpose of their role is. And it's the purpose of their role. It's not their personal purpose, like.
In the context of working for you. Yeah.
But we've also, for the employees that are interested in this, we've also walked through purpose exercises. If you want to figure out what you think maybe your life purpose is, like, let's talk about that. And we do consistent one-to-ones. And these are the types of things that we're talking about. And we...
Yeah. Another place to make sure that you integrate this stuff.
Yeah. So we just, is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. But we know what the Kool-Aid is. Mm-hmm. And we drink it to the best of our ability. Yeah. And there's other ways, but
yeah, I feel big ones. I'm not sure there's like I'm certain there's not like a correct way to implement a mission or a story. It's just the point is, I think, like you said, it's just like being aware of it, and then being not asleep at the wheel, but just making sure that in the fabric of your organization, from a day-to-day operation standpoint, again, how you hire, how you reward, what you punish, how you...
Values-based questions in interviews, right? Instead of like, do you believe in our core values? Who's not going to say yes in an interview? Right?
Terrible interview question.
Yeah, but ask them questions that would have them demonstrate from past experience.
My favorite word to use is reveal. It reveals whether or not they.
Yes, I like that's a good word. Reveal. It's a verb.
Yeah.
Verbs are great.
And it's suspenseful,
That is like what?
Or it's all at the end of it.
We actually have someone in our. I have a team member in interviews, just kind of like
Yeah.
sit there with like a low kind of roll kind of thing going.
I'm sure you have someone that plays drums on staff because the amount of joking around you do, you got to have the like on just ready to go at any time.
Yeah, that's a.
Someone's just
Actually help position. Yeah, the percussionist. Yeah, we have two big timpani and kind of the you're reading nook.
Yeah. You've done a good job not going on too many ridiculous tangents.
We're doing okay.
Yeah.
But this is not ridiculous because it's sure.
Yeah.
We have timpani in our office. It's every office should have timpani. But yeah, so like, have you ever written down goals?
Have I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever forgotten that you wrote them down?
All the time. There's probably a ton actually in this book right here.
Have you ever found
that I revisited?
later on?
Yeah, I think so.
Have you ever noticed that you accomplished many of those things?
Yeah, that is kind of a funny revelation at times.
That's exactly what you just said. When you are able to see it up here, you immediately start to go after it, which is why like one of the rules of mountain climbing is don't look where you don't want to go. Don't see. Yeah, exactly. Don't look. Yeah, seriously. Don't look down. Don't look where you don't want to go. Right. So that's the power of vision.
Yeah.
And that's story is a better way to capture things like that. Right. So your goals, those are stories. Right. So it's you to your point of like, yeah, you want to like create some structure to kind of like bring it to life.
Yeah.
But it's the perfect structure is less important than having the things thought through in its words. There is magic in words. There has been demonstrated that some ideas don't exist in developing cultures until they have a word for it. And all of a sudden, once there's a word for it, now it's a real thing to them. And that is just so bizarre. So like part of the storytelling, it's finding, because you're not inventing, you're revealing the truth of this leader, this brand, this organization, this culture, whatever. And now you're just giving powerful words to it so that it becomes not just thing that's in the ether, but this thing that has handles. The words give it handles. Now you can hold it and you can exchange it with other people.
Yeah, I think that's important because again, like, you know, in a much more tangible example way, but similar concept but very related, you know, I go into clients all the time and they're unhappy because a lot of their people maybe aren't doing the thing that they want them to do. And their point is like, can I just hire someone and then just like they do whatever I expect them to do? And almost always my first question is, well, have you clearly communicated to them what that is? And they're always upset usually immediately because they realize that they did not. I mean, maybe there was something written in the job posting or even a basic job description, but that's really just listing tasks in a role. It's not communicating to which, you know, to what degree they're supposed to be owning those tasks or how it fits into the bigger picture or how they should be doing. Like if your accountability is to make money or make sales, certainly there's a proper way to do that according to the organization's values and enough. So you can't really expect people to behave or perform in the way that you want them to if you're not making it clear and sharing that story with them. Yeah.
Yep. And it needs to be repetitive.
Yeah. And if you don't even know what that is yourself or don't have it written down or articulated, then you can be sure that your people are gonna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You get it.
Yeah. I think that was a great way to end. We just came full circle.
Did we do it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
What's up? Let's go. We did it.
I envisioned it, you know.
Yeah, you did.
Like,
You manifested that.
yeah. The story of this podcast episode was in my mind and I envisioned it and then that allowed me to put it into reality.
Yes. Dream it.
For everybody.
All right, believe
Dream it, do it.
Yes.
I think that's written somewhere.
I know. It's on the wall there to the left. All right. Well, thank you very much for having me here. This has been a lot of fun. It was fun, by the way.
Yeah.
This was a lot of fun.
It was?
Yeah, it was.
I know. It's not as silly as our episode, probably on your podcast, which you guys should check out too. But, you know, we try to make HR interesting and fun and helpful and useful and not annoying and overt and then,
Sure.
you know. I mean, I could just be projecting those things onto it and no one actually thinks those things about it, but I really
No, you definitely, you are those things.
an inconvenient
you are those
necessity. Yeah. That's how I see myself also.
As inconvenient necessity. The
The story.
Emily Martin story.
Yeah, no, it's
An
not a very good
inconvenient
story.
necessity. Yeah, I think you should replace that with a better story.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's right.
I know you're just being playful. I know you've got a ton of confidence because I see how you roll. I see the success of your clients. It's not an accident. So
No, thank you. Yeah. So hopefully we inspired you guys to kind of think about this and probably an inconvenient truth that we just dropped in your lap, but there's so much value to be gained from it. And if your business, I think, is probably stagnant, or you're right, maybe you have lost some of your, enthusiasm and each day to go and do it, consider that maybe this is a route to reignite that. And also your employees, that they seem to be dragging their butts in every day and no one's too inspired. Perhaps
delivering for your customers consistently could be something here.
start a campaign. It does take time, but I think within a year or so, you should see, it start to move the needle, I would say.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks. If you guys are interested in learning more about what Erik does, you can check out. Did we say the name of your business? Of the Sea?
Yeah, I snuck it in.
Okay.
Of the sea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the ocean.
Yeah, like the ocean of, yeah, exactly.
But you can also just Google Erik and it'll come up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. See you next time.